good evening, my local drones, as I Bio Gundam, and I'm back in for another video. So today, me and Kaiser and Periodic Pete are going to be talking about Kamen Rider Kuuga. So, you two introduce yourselves.
Alrighty. Well, yeah, this is Kaiser Shounen again. I am the YouTuber of 2,000 talents. Exactly 2,000. Pete
It's
can
true.
attest to that.
It is true. Periodically verified.
Yeah, it has been
And
fact-checked
I
and
am, yeah,
Fact check. No fake news here, people.
fact checked by an actual periodic table. Although I'm not my periodic table today. I am in my festive Halloween form as Pumpkin Pete from Ruby. So yeah, I am periodic Pete. Make videos on YouTube. I also like Breaking Bad. That's about it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about, like, Kamen Rider Kuuga, which I do believe is, I think this is the first of the, not Haitian era, but,
No, is within
Heisei.
the Heisei era.
Yeah, I think, yeah, okay,
like
it is yeah, I think it's the first entry of the Heisei era. And also, I think Kamen Rider Kuuga is also quite important because A, it's the first of the Heisei era, so it's the first of its era. But also, Kamen Rider Kuuga is probably one of the more darker Kamen Rider shows, excluding Kamen Rider Black and Kamen Rider Faiz.
You want to tell our beautiful audience what the Heisei era is, in case there's anyone who is possibly watching or hosting who may not know what it is?
Okay, so the Japanese, this is like, basically the Heisei era is when the new Japanese emperors come into power, basically. So,
Oh, I thought you were talking about, like, an era of, like, within Kamen Rider.
Oh,
so like this is actually
no. Well, yes and no. It's sort of like marked with like the eras in Japan itself.
Okay.
That's how they kind of divide that.
Yeah, that's how they kind of divide it. Well, now obviously they do divide it and say, like, the Kamakura era or the Heian era and stuff like that. But now in modern days they tend to divide it up by emperors. So,
right, makes sense.
Yes, this is the first show. Is Emperor Heisei? No, I think he died recently. I think. Yeah, I think he died recently. Actually, the Heisei guy. Anyway, I'll look this up later. But yeah, this is the first installment in the Heisei era, and would it be safe to say this is one of the more, like, darker Kamen Rider shows? You're outside of Black and Kamen Rider Faiz.
Possibly. I've heard some really fucked things about Amazon and a couple of scant few things about Kiva. And even though it's not as outwardly, like, brutal necessarily, there are some moments in retrospect with, like, Kamen Rider Faiz that kind of, teeters on that a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Kiva, I didn't watch all of it, but it had, like, vampires as a theme and stuff, so, like, I wouldn't be surprised it didn't go down some dark, like, some dark rabbit holes. But, like, yeah, but yeah, I would say Kamen Rider Kuuga is definitely, I think, one of the more darker installments I've seen. Especially when it comes to some of, like, the brutal deaths and stuff like that, and some, like, the crazy shit that happens in this thing. Like, when I was rewatching, I was just like,
yeah,
oh yeah, I forgot about that. I'm like, oh, and also,
yeah, same here.
Yeah. Another thing I find interesting about Kamen Rider Kuuga is, like, kind of how grounded some of it is, and, like, how grounded some of the drama is. Like, for example, like, one of the characters, she's, like, a professor. I forget her name, but one of the conflicts she's having is, like, her trying to find time for her son. Like, it is such, like, a human and grounded thing, and, most Kamen Rider shows, I don't even think, like, tackle or talk about that. The price of heroism, because, like, this single mother, like, her work is so essential to Kamen Rider Kuuga, and, like, her work is helping saving people's lives. Yet at the same time, she has to sacrifice spending time with her son for the better of, for the better of humanity. Which yeah, that's one of the things I like about Kamen Rider Kuuga is it has a bit of, like, a bit of a personal touch to the conflicts and stakes, right? Like, it isn't just like Kamen Rider saving, like Kamen Rider isn't just saving, like, the average Joe. He's trying to protect the lives and safety of people, and these people matter. I've finished my point. You say what you say.
Oh yeah. I absolutely agree with that. I think that what was it? I think Well, to an extent, because at the end of the day, all Kamen Riders do this to some extent. I think what makes Kuuga stand out is particularly how it pays such a close attention to the way the community sort of
Reacts.
what the community represents, how the community like contributes to Kuga's battles, to a Kamen Rider's battles, because this is a way more like open series in terms of all the monster happenings in comparison to all
like
the
because
others.
like people
And
know
also how they
yeah,
affect
this,
Godai.
that's the interesting thing about it is that like people know that Kamen Rider Kuuga exists. People see him in the streets. There are even people who try and help him because dude, these fucking monsters are going around butchering people in the streets, in the publics, and this is fucking Japan, not fucking Detroit. People, it's gonna roll people up. And what I like about I like the personal touch is it isn't just this abstract idea of Kamen Riders protecting the community. You see the community of Tokyo and other places in Japan try and fight back. Try and help Kuuga. It isn't just, oh, I saved some random old lady. No, Kuuga maybe even knows that old lady. That's Grandma Miyako from down the street.
Godai, it's Godai.
Sorry, Godai. Imagine
How dare you?
Imagine if Gojo was in the show. Oh my god. Anyway, Godai. It feels
throughout all of heaven and earth, I am alone, am the Kamen Rider one.
We'll have to do Jujutsu Kaisen at some point.
I am the Kuuga one.
Yeah, we might have to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen at some point because I've got the manga for it. It could be fun. But anyway, that's topic for another time. The stakes feel a lot more personal for Godai because he actually actively cares about the community. He's not one of those anti-hero Kamen Riders. He actively cares about the community. He's actively involved, and this isn't some abstract of oh, my community's in danger. No, the people that he cares about live in this community, and he's gonna find protect.
I think what's interesting about this, and I say this as someone who, because until recently, and I guess I still am kind of entirely new to Kamen Rider. My experience with Kamen Rider so far has been the first couple episodes of W, first couple episode of Gain, and and then this show, although I didn't end up finishing it, unfortunately. So if anyone's wondering about that, I have not finished Kuuga. I've gotten pretty close.
Yeah,
but I just never got around to it.
All right, savages, believe in you.
Okay,
listen,
let's hope that Lone Crit doesn't watch this video because I can just feel his rage as you hear.
Okay, listen, he hasn't even finished Kuuga to my knowledge. He doesn't get to be mad at me for that. And I at least finished Kamen
can I just say this? This is the second time I rewatched this freaking show, and he hasn't even finished it once, despite loving it.
I think he's the savage here.
I'm just imagining Lone Crit in the comment section, he's typing up, it's a 50-page. It's 50 page.
Now, even though I am new to Kamen Rider, I am not unfamiliar with what's the term?
The tropes.
Tokusatsu.
Yeah, the Tokusatsu tropes.
And probably for a lot of the same reason why a lot of other people who are familiar with the Tokusatsu that came over to America, commonly known as this little show, you guys might have heard of it, called Power Rangers, I think is what it's called.
Never heard of it.
Yeah,
that sounds pretty dumb to me. That sounds kind of childish.
It's very, niche,
very obscure.
Not a lot of people have heard of it, but I grew up. And I think it's interesting because there's a lot of as cool as as much as I did like Power Rangers for what I grew up with. There were elements that were formulaic. And they're formulaic isn't necessarily a bad thing. You got Phineas and Ferb, which is incredibly formulaic. But it is also cool to see something with that same kind of tokusatsu vibe that still has a lot of the same vibes as Power Rangers or Sentai, but has a very different twist on it. And going off of what you were saying about community, is that a big thing that I thought was kind of interesting was how Kuuga works alongside with the police.
Yeah,
how there are.
But by the way, I just want to mention Detective Ichido. Give this fucking Giga Chad a medal. The actor who plays him and the character.
Oh yeah, 110%.
Fucking based. This guy is based. This fucking mad jack. This guy.
The kind of stuff that he does.
It's fucking crazy. This guy's a mad jab. The fucking.
There is not a single. I don't think there has ever been. I don't think there has ever been, or at least not on the Power Ranger shows that I've watched, someone who is just human and never has a morphing sequence who like goes up against some of the enemies that he does. Granted, he doesn't like get any victories, but like the fact that there are times when he's even come face to face with like the main villain of the series, has tried to shoot her down.
I wouldn't say he hasn't got any victories. Like he comes pretty damn close to some of them. I think he kills like the main like chick.
Oh no, you're right. I think of oh no, you were talking about I haven't gotten that far. So if that's what you were.
Yeah, like if I remember correctly, like Ichigo, like I think he kills like at least I think a couple of them after they've been softened up by Kuuga. Or I definitely know he kills the chick one.
Yeah, he does, and that's like at near the end of the story. But like even then, he still contributes a lot to fights.
Yeah,
he's saving Godai's.
Like
saving
honestly,
Godai's
this
skin.
guy, as much as Godai saves people and saves Ichigo himself, like Detective Ichigo, like this dude, he saved Godai several times, and this guy like steps up, like, listen, this guy is a fucking Giga Chan. Like this like every episode, this guy's doing mad lad shit, like this mad jab. It's like, and I'm like,
I think Ichijo is definitely one of the better like secondary characters in the story. In like Kamen Rider, just in general, from the ones that I've seen so far. Not just because of how much he contributes to fights, even if he isn't always super effective, but how much we get an understanding of his character throughout, and now it hammers home the very like quintessential themes of not only Kuuga but Kamen Rider in general, which is the simple but very poignant power of the way human beings can contribute and make a significant change, even from the smallest actions. I think it does a really good job
Detective
illustrating
Godai and his deductions, I mean, I don't think Kuuga would have been able to save as many people as he could, because even though Godai, I mean, he's not a dumb Ichigo, with his experience and intelligence, his detective experience, he's like incredibly useful. I mean, he's often like he's the investigator, he's the guy who helps put the puzzles together. He and without him, I think Godai would be lost. And like they're like a team almost. Like,
but even then, that doesn't even to an extent. But even then, that doesn't stay the whole way through, which is why I like about it. I feel like both of them sort of like this is why they make such a great duo. They pick up cues from each other a little bit more as the story goes on. You see moments where Godai, kind of helps put things together in a logical way, and like Godai is intelligent in a different way. He's intelligent in terms of like emotional intelligence, right? But even then, he has a couple of like big brain moves himself a couple of times, which kind of surprised other people around them.
Yeah, like I almost keep saying Gojo. Fucking hell. Like Godai is, I think, smarter than people give him credit. But like they feel almost like two peas in a pod, right? Like they work so well together.
Yeah.
And like that's what I like about the show. Like the character, like and here's the thing. At the beginning, Ichigo thinks like, "What the fuck are you doing, kid? Like get out of the way." And that's what I like about it as well. Like the relationship feels very realistic and real. Like they start out kind of acquainted. Or out, they start out kind of a bit like on the fence, but as time goes on, they become like trusted partners. And this Ichigo guy, like he fucking steps up to the plate. Like this guy is based, and like damn, we don't have secondary characters like this anymore in Kamen Rider.
Also, he's not a substitute Soul Reaper, dude. Okay, it's Ichijo. Okay.
Dude, imagine if he was a Soul Reaper. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, let this guy cook."
Oh my!
I'm gonna defeat you with the power of Reishi and this gun I found.
This gun I found. This show is also where the meme of the with the power of friendship, love, and this gun I found was. This is the source. If anyone wants to actually see us, but I guess do we want to like go over the premise or no?
You should go over the premise quickly.
Okay, I can probably do that. So it's the synopsis is pretty simple. Yusuke Godai is basically a traveler and someone who wants to make friends with everybody by utilizing all types of esoteric skills, right? And he came back to Japan after just traveling around the world, and he's friends with a chick, Sawatari, who is basically an archaeologist. She and her archaeology team went to like the mountains near Tokyo, basically, and found this ancient tomb with all of these different freaking ancient artifacts and writings and stuff. And they disturbed the tomb of one of these ancient civilizations called the and as a result, most if not all of the people in there just did not survive because something woke up.
Yeah, because
and it's why we are against grave robbing. Anyways,
Lots of people die in this.
Yeah, lots of people fucking die.
Yeah,
but
I
like,
think this show has a
so
death
after
toll.
that,
I think this show has a death toll like just as high as like Kamen Rider Faiz, and people. Like,
it's higher. To be honest,
yeah, probably.
I feel like it's much.
There's several citizens that die in like every episode, or at the very least, every like villain arc.
Yeah, like Now that you think about it, I think the show has a higher death toll than Kamen Rider Faiz, and Kamen Rider Faiz was pretty fucking brutal too with the death toll. Like, let the bodies hit the floor.
At most, I would say that the death toll in Faiz, as far as we know, are like in the few hundred that we know about. With what we know about, I am willing to bet money that with Kuuga, it's probably in like the couple thousands.
Maybe even
which
tens
if you
of thousands.
Possibly, which is really big in terms of how you think about death tolls, especially in Japan, right?
Yeah, like
it's no coincidence that people are so big about that.
Yeah, I mean, just to give some people some perspective or context they don't know, like, crime is very low in Japan. Now, I should add the caveat of, like, reported crime, right? Because, reported crime. But regardless, like, Japan, for the most part, is a relatively safe country and the crime is relatively low. So, mass murders like this is incredibly... This is a big deal.
Yeah, 110%. Like, we see how the burning of KyoAni went. And, like, the fact that 10... If I remember correctly, 10 people died there, right?
And I think
that made like, fucking national news.
I think 10 people died, and then there were, like, several more that were, like, heavily injured.
And that made national news. So the fact is that it's no surprise that further you go into the show that's like people become much more depressed and sad as a result.
Yeah, there were like some times when I genuinely thought that Ichijo was gonna die because like I knew that he was a writer and like he came pretty close multiple times to a lot of the different villains who were just offing random citizens like one after another. There were some genuine times when and like part of that is also just maybe because I'm not familiar with Kamen Rider. Like maybe they don't normally kill off those kinds of like important characters, or maybe it would have been less obvious if I had seen.
They do kill them off, but like typically it's usually for like they don't do it too often. But like
it's not very often.
Yeah, that was so fun about this is that like going into an entirely new territory of tokusatsu and just not really knowing what to expect and not really following the same kind of formula and like character stuff that I normally expect from like something as kid-friendly as Power Rangers was very refreshing, and it made a lot of things very unnerving in some cases because I never really knew what to expect.
Yeah, there's like a lot of scenes in the show that are really unnerving. Like going back to Kamen Rider Faiz, like Kamen Rider Faiz is a lot of like creepy cinematography. I would say that Kamen Rider sorry, let me just tone down my voice because I'm going to get too loud. I would say Kamen Rider Kuuga has a really good, like, uncanny camera shot, like, especially with the, what they call the Godai. No, what tribe are they called? They're called the, Grongi.
The Grongi.
Yeah, the Grungi.
Yeah,
like, especially when we see them, how they're dressed and, like, how they shift their eyes. Like, really uncanny. Like, panning shots of them. Like, I just want to say, I fucking love these guys as villains because they look like absolute fucking psychos. They dress like them too. And I love, like, the scenes where they close on their faces, where they're twitching, their eyes are darting back to forth, right? Like, it's really, like, unnerving and unsettling. And just keep in mind, this is a fucking kids show, or, like, a show that is for, like, kids / maybe preteens.
That's what surprised me.
It's not even... Oh, go ahead, Pete.
No, we're not even... We're skipping the rock, paper, scissors stuff. Go ahead.
No, you
do it.
Okay, fair. But I'll just be quick. But it's not even just the fact that it's like that brutal or that edgy at times as well. Like there's a lot of moments in between of just the characters interacting so normally. And like I don't know what it is about the comedy in this show in comparison to other Kamen Riders that I've seen, especially in comparison to Faiz. But this show manages to nail it much better consistently.
I think it's because the comedy feels like a lot more natural. Like take Kamen Kamen Rider Kabuto, for example, like the comedy there, a lot of it felt really, really fucking forced and dry.
Yeah, that was like incredibly brutal.
That's probably one of the best episodes.
It is.
What episode was that, by the way? I don't know if I
think
got.
It was 38 or 39. It was one of like the late 30s, early 40s.
Oh, I must have been like right behind that because I don't.
It is
I
one of the
remember
best
thinking
episodes. It is one of the best fucking episodes. Like,
yeah,
is...
that's what I've heard, along with like episodes 11 and 12.
Yeah, like, and it's so good because throughout the entire story, ever since Godai had gotten the belt that is a part of this ancient civilization that he uses to fight off the Grongi, progressively, you see how constantly fighting and battling these monsters that he cannot talk to, he cannot reason with or anything, and the damages that they have caused as a result of their battle have really, really weighed on him. So he is just progressively getting it's even more impactful because it doesn't even show in his actions too much outside of fighting. But when he is fighting, he is ferocious, especially in this freaking scene.
He's
and I think all of that
he's
is
punching, he's ripping, like just no mercy, like because and people may complain that like the Grongi are kind of like one-dimensional, oh they're all like evil, but I think that's kind of the point because you have someone like Godai who like he tries to reach an understanding with people, right? Like Godai is what you'd call, I mean, I would describe him as a very worldly person. Like he tries to understand people and bridge gaps between people. The Gongi tribe, whatever the fuck they call, like they will not listen. Violence is the only thing they understand. And for someone like Godai, like it's antithetical to himself and his worldview because he wants to try and understand people. Because as far as he's concerned, like if he has to use violence, then he's failed to reach understanding. But like these Gongi tribes, violence is the only thing they understand. As far as Godai is concerned, it's like, all right, you want violence, you're gonna get it. And like what I love about the scene is he's beating this fucking thing to death. You see like flashbacks of like people that this creature has killed, and like Godai's like screaming, punching, he's kicking, he's like ripping and tearing, and this creature almost like begs for mercy. Godai just keeps on going because he's so enraged.
Nah,
I
fucking kill people. Fuck those kids.
Yeah, to be fair, oh my god, fuck those kids. And keep in mind that not just grown men and women get fucking killed in this show. Children get freaking gadded in this fucking thing. Like several high schoolers died in one episode. I think a bunch of like older people got killed in one episode, especially during like the train.
School students and their parents got killed. Like, there's no fucking mercy here. And, like, Gojo beats this fucking thing there. For the part of you feel bad for this fucking thing. But at the same time, you're like, nah, do it. Like, give him some, give him a taste of his own medicine. But then, like Gojo, no, not Gojo. Godai is scary. Like, as the show goes on, you realize that Godai is kind of scary.
And honestly, I personally, I just feel kind of bad for him. I mean, especially on the second time around.
He has to, like, he has to go against kind of, like, his own friendly nature a lot in order for him to deal with these kinds of creatures and enemies who cannot be reasoned with. And in some ways, it makes him have to like approach things in a way that is very not Godai, if that kind of makes any sense. And it's hard to it's hard to like express what that means without kind of like going into who Godai is as a character. So maybe we should also start there. So like in fact, if you want, we can start. We can start from episode 11 because that, and from what I have been told, is so episode 11 was this very interesting kind of look into who Godai was kind of as a character from a third-person perspective. Is that you had this. I'll give like the basic summary, and then Kaiser, if you want to like go into it a little bit more into like the meaning of certain things and events, you're more than welcome to.
Go ahead. I've talked enough for now.
Yeah. So the gist of it is like, okay, so there's a rhino enemy, and like of course Godai has to find a way to stop him. But arguably, like the more interesting thing about it is the stuff about Godai's teacher when he was when Godai was younger. It follows around the guy who was his teacher a while back, who's going to visit his school, which is about to be closed down and demolished, if I'm not mistaken? Or is it just being closed down?
I think it's just closed down. I wouldn't be surprised if it was getting demolished soon as well. And keep in mind, this is also Godai's birthday as well, by the way.
Yeah. And this teacher in particular had been affected a lot by who Godai was, even as a child. And we getting a look into like who he was then, the fact that like apparently it is implied that there is a lot about that kind of idealism that is still there today. This very positive guy who wants to, like, what was it, wanting to learn like 1,000 skills. I think that was a thing that was I think
Yeah,
emphasized in
2,000 skills, because he
2000.
wants to, make other people happy.
Yeah.
Because that's just what makes him happy at the end of the day, especially after the things that he'd gone through in his childhood.
And that was so like getting this interesting perspective from someone who knew him, how he was motivated to kind of make people happy, and that is like something that is core to his character. It then so he wants to make people happy, and like that's an important part of his character, and it's also important because like that time when he gives the beat down on that one Grongi in one of the late 30s episodes, that contrast it becomes that much more noticeable when you see him doing something that's not necessarily out of character, but it is very much not Godai, because this is someone who is
a
like
stark contrast in his actions.
He is someone who is
the world.
Yeah, he is someone who is devoted to finding ways to bring happiness to others and then doing that. And the thing about violence is that it never makes people happy. Well, it doesn't make good people happy, I should say. I'm sure there are some evil people that it makes very happy.
Listen, Pete,
right.
you're just gonna get in touch with your inner child. Kids are.
And I mean, like, you could even say, and I mean, you could say, oh well, I mean, they're removing a bad guy from the world to kill less people so that there can be more happiness, and that's more like that removes sadness, and so you are reducing the amount of death that could happen, but you are not increasing the amount of happiness from like killing a Grongi. And like that's what he has been doing, but there was something like I've seen the scene, I've not gotten to the episode, but even like without the context, there's something about that is very visceral and violent that heavily starkly contrasts with what we understand Godai to be all about, even though it makes sense for him.
And before that, like typically he'll try and finish the Grongi off as quickly as possible. And this one, like he's drawing it out, like he wants to listen. It's not good enough that he defeats this creature. He wants to make it suffer. He wants.
That's probably what makes it. That's probably what makes it such a stark contrast, is because he is normally someone who wants to bring happiness, and now he specifically wants to bring anguish and pain. He wants to draw it out.
The fights before were a lot more choreographed,
and
kind of, and we're like have these have a lot these dramatic finishers and stuff. But this time it was actually much more brutal, much more like a realistic like slugfest out of anger.
Like, doesn't he, like, literally kick him out from the building? They crash into a car, they're slamming into each other on the concrete,
That's exactly what happens. Yeah. I have it right in front of me.
Yeah, it's fucking brutal. Like, it's like, what happens when these two creatures with super strength with all these abilities, like, duke it out in the streets? Like, it's...
He's beating the shit out of it, and, like, it's bleeding from its face, and, like, he doesn't stop. It, like, runs away. It is, like, running. And Godai is trying to, get back here, tries to beat it again. It's not even trying to defend itself. It is like, it catches his punch once, but like, it is just trying to get away. And then once it like actually gets some decent, like, because Godai like does like an uppercut and it gets sent, away, there's like a little bit of distance between them. It starts to get up, it thinks it's safe. And then Godai immediately gets to the fucking motorcycle and runs it over. And now they're on the streets, and this continues. He keeps beating him, by the way. Like, now that he's on the motorcycle, now he tries to defend himself, but it's like it's Silver the Hedgehog. It's no use. And so then eventually he gets flung off. And I'm sorry, I've been playing this new Sonic game, so it's on my mind. Yeah. Anyways, and then he stops. He flings it off, pulls out his sword, and just slashes at him again and again and again and again and again. Bear in mind, too, is that we are 40 episodes, or like 40 something episodes in. I forget what number you said. So like, we know Godai probably could end this pretty quickly if he really wanted to. Like, he has so many other enemies before.
But he drags it out.
And yeah, and knowing that like all of this is that like he doesn't is it adds a lot of extra context. Then he explodes and he's just standing there unmorphed in the smoke and fire and not even looking. It's just pain and red.
Red and, blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. And afterwards, like after that episode, he's like kind of horrified what he did afterwards.
And then like the best part about it is that it's like his reaction to it is, what was it? It's not like overly dramatized. And I think it's like it's such a credit to not only the great directing that this show has, which the directing in this show is really fucking good.
Amazing.
All
it's
the
amazing.
camera angles and shots makes it look great, but also can we just give it up for freaking Joe Odagiri, the guy who plays Godai? His fucking acting ability is so fucking uncanny. There isn't a whole lot of dialogue of Godai being extremely sad and reacting to a lot of these things. It's about the way the camera hangs on his face. It's about his expressions and the way that he sort of moves and tries to dilute the situation. That honestly makes you feel even worse for him than you would otherwise for other characters that are going through similar things. Not to say that, having over-the-top reactions to that stuff is bad storytelling, really, but I think this really fits the story that Kuuga is trying to tell, and it does such a great job for his character that the fact that he's trying to be low-key about it is it's such a stark contrast.
Yeah, like, even though he's
especially when you juxtapose it with a lot.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off, but even though he's in pain, like he doesn't want other people to know because he doesn't want other people to worry. Because the thing with Godai is that he bears a lot of burdens, and you can, as the show goes on, you can definitely see those burdens like start to mount up. Because he's thinking in the back of mind, like, how many people could I have saved because I wasn't strong enough, because I wasn't quick enough? Like, how many people? I mean, he's even seen people killed in front of him, and that's got to be like horrific for someone for him. And it's like, how many people could he have saved if he wasn't brutal? Because he hasn't been brutal enough, because he hasn't been vicious enough. And
he doesn't even need to say it. You can understand it just by looking at him.
Even the characters
That's
know
incredible.
that. Like, he must feel profound guilt of like, how many people could I have saved if I wasn't, here's the thing. It's not like, oh, suddenly he beats this guy to death. Like, no, it's a gradual build-up. Because, as the show goes on, the casualties keep on piling up. And as far as Godai is concerned, those are people I could have saved, but I couldn't because I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't being brutal enough. I wasn't being ruthless enough. I wasn't being, harsh enough. I wasn't beating them into the ground enough.
Yeah. It's such great character. And all of this isn't just because of these, really bad things happening. But also, it works so well because of the times that we see Godai spending time just normally with other people, the way he talks with his sister, the way he interacts with kids, the way he talks with his uncle. Well, he calls him uncle, but the way he interacts with other people and contributes.
Also older guy who's a family friend, but he's got his OG son.
Right. Yeah, and the way he interacts with them is always so incredibly genuine and heartwarming, and just doing simple things, just trying to make their day a little bit better in all these different ways. Kind of adds more gravity to how worthy he is for taking on the mantle of Kamen Rider in this show, but also how sad it ultimately is, because these are the only things that are keeping him from really crashing out.
Yeah, I mean,
and if there's any chance that any of them could be taken away from him, that things are going to get really bad.
Yeah, and here's the thing, without him, Japan is fucked. Tokyo is fucked. I mean, yes, and even though guns can hurt the Gungi tribe or something like that, and human weapons can hurt them, it's not going to be enough to actually put them down permanently. Kamen Rider, he is the only one who can actually truly defeat these things. And I think they mentioned the show, right, is that his don't they mention at the I think the rest of the show that he also might become like them as well? because I think it's also partially like
Yeah, near the end of the show, there's like a, thing that they found out that Godai's growing power is a sign, the belt basically responds to strong emotions and feelings. And so, Godai wants to be stronger and strong enough to beat the Grongris, so it tries to meet those demands. However, as a result of that, it could change him into a more like violent creature, right? That is prophesied to bring about great darkness and destruction.
Yeah, because here's the interesting thing about like what I like about the Kamen Rider belt in the show, and what I like about the groundedness is that like this belt is actually like physically changing him. When they take him to like the doctor to get an MRI scan and stuff like that, like the belt itself is interweaving with his bones and flesh and all that stuff. Like it's a part of him.
Yeah.
And like,
right.
It's almost like a little bit of body horror stuff, and like the doctors are just like, we can't explain this. Like, it's a part of you, but not you at the same time, and it's giving him strength. Like it's making his bones as strong as steel. It's making his muscles more dense. It's giving him sharper senses, and like it goes a little bit into like the body horror territory, because he's like, wait, was I always this strong?
Yeah.
And like, and that's why I quite like about the show, because I think very few Kamen Rider shows ever go into that of like, I mean, Kamen Riders can like bench press cars and smash through concrete with minimal effort. I mean, how would you react if you could just suddenly?
Yeah, but most of the time, they don't really do the widespread damage. Like, even though a lot of the most Kamen Riders are probably capable of these things, probably partially due to budgetary reasons. No, they're not really able to showcase how much damage that causes on a widespread basis. But with Kuuga, they were absolutely able.
Yeah, we can't all have the budget of SPD where we can bench press CGI cars.
Yeah, but like literally, there's a lot of destruction in this fucking show. Like they're smashing through buildings, they're smashing through cars, they're smashing through helicopters.
Yeah,
crazy, dude.
Oh, like it's fucking wild.
Like it is another thing that's funny about watching a show the second time, because the first time I watched it, there were no subtitles for the Grongi when they were talking. When they talk,
No.
it's a different language.
Yeah, they even
but
in the
one, yeah. But this time I watched the one where I could understand what they're saying, and just seeing that stark contrast, you understand way more about what in the world is the Grongi's like deal. Like, I understand that some people kind of prefer the mystery there, which would be fine if the scenes with the Grongi were short, but as the show keeps going, it's longer and longer, and it's probably better, to the point where it'd probably be better to understand what the hell they're talking about.
I think initially, it serves as a great. I think initially it's fine that you don't understand what they're saying, because like they kind of like this alien thing, which ties into Godai's character arc, right? Character thing, like where he wants to try and understand them, but he can't because they're violent, psychopathic creatures and they don't even speak the same language. I think a few of them can like speak Japanese, or they've learned how to speak Japanese, but most of them don't. Like, they're this alien thing. They look human, but like underneath they're not human at all. But yeah, the fucking Grongi are fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's some sort of like ritual or battle royale game that they have, where it's like each of them has to kill a certain number of humans within a certain amount of time, and then they like advance to the next stage of the game. And at the end, we don't fully know exactly why that they do it.
No, I mean, outside of like they do it for fun, we don't actually know much about them, why they do that. We just know that like, okay, they partially do it for fun, but
partially. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I feel like a good portion of their reason.
Yeah,
just for fun.
I feel like I never, because you guys seen to the end. Oh, I mean, I guess I can't comment on it that much, but at the same time, like, that I was getting was just, I just assumed that they were doing it exclusively for the fun of it.
Yeah. I mean, here's the other thing, is they also kill each other as well, because they have a very, like, social Darwinist mentality, too. Like, I think the king dude that Godai fights in the end, like, even says that, or they mention that, like, they purged the weaker ones.
I don't know, like, do you guys want to, You said you said favorite episodes, or I think I said favorite episodes. I forget what else you suggested.
Just topics and favorite scenes and shit like that. Like I'll start off. We'll start from there. So So, when it comes to Kamen Riders, there's very few, like, Kamen Riders where I can say, like, oh, these episodes are memorable. The thing about Kamen Rider Kuuga is that, like, a lot of the episodes are really memorable, and I think one of my favorite episodes was probably the one where he beat that guy to death. Like,
Oh,
just because of, like, the
we
stuff we
talked about that
Yeah,
last
we
time.
talked about that. But, like, I think one of my favorite episodes was that. I also think the first two episodes were also my favorite because, like, Kamen Rider Kuuga has a really good starting opening, like very similar to Fires. Like it doesn't waste time or fuck around. Like you're immediately in it, and that's kind of what I like about Kuuga is it doesn't like waste time like some Kamen Rider shows do. Like some shows like really take a while to get the plot going. Kuuga just kind of like hits the ground running, very similar to Fires.
Right. I think one of my favorite episodes is definitely the one involving the teacher that we mentioned earlier that was trying to visit Godai. Because what's so great about it is that it's one thing to get a character's perspective of as to why they are the way they are, but it's another thing to see it from the perspective of the people around them that have known him for such a long time, which makes sense because these are the kinds of things that Godai himself wouldn't express the same way. So I always found that really interesting. I think another standout episode, just generally, I don't remember which exact episode it was, but it was one where Godai became much more integrated into the police force, and you have him and Ichijo in a car just talking about the parents that they've lost and how that affected them. And it's like it wasn't super emotional. It was just kind of like okay, that's something we have in common, because like it's the idea that both of these two characters are very much the same as to in terms of like what things made them who they are.
I mean, if and it kind of makes you think that like Ichijo could have become Ichijo, yeah. The detective. Like, here's the thing: if he had found the belt, you think like yeah, he would have been Kamen Rider.
Yeah, but of course, he has need to, and he still contributes in a lot of really interesting ways. Yeah, and like I think just another episode that stands out is when the whole cast, essentially, all of the side characters that have been helping out Godai and Ichijo. You got Sawatari, you got the doctor guy who's a fucking louse, and I love him. He's really funny.
I love the doctor. I remember like once he was on a date, he's like examining someone's facial structure. He's like, "Oh, you got such a lovely facial structure and lovely neck."
Yeah. Oh my god, that one was funny. But you got them. You got the scientist chick who is trying to be a good mom to his son, and they're all discussing why they're all discussing all the facts, putting all everything that they know about the lore together that they've been trying to figure out throughout the entire series, and just them realizing that like, oh shit, we're putting all of our hopes on this one guy to take care of the Grungi, and he's like such a normal person, he's a genuine guy, and they kind of pick like his little quirks. Like I think Godai was doing something, and then like Ichijo actually made a joke, and somewhere else along the way during that scene, they also gave like a thumbs up, like everybody. Like I think the doctor guy was worried about putting all their hopes in Godai. That kind of got diffused, and everybody just gave a thumbs up because they're all in this together. That's how close they became as a result of this conflict, and I really like that.
Actually, another episode that kind of stood out to me is like the episode where Kamen Rider Kuuga almost dies, and they actually think he's dead, and that was like a really like interesting episode because like I love the acting and like the set pieces where he's just like staying there, he's cold and pale, and he's like there's no heartbeat, and they think like fuck, he's dead, and we can't do anything about it. But then you find out it's like, oh no, wait, he's not actually dead. He's on suspended animation, and
he's only mostly dead.
Yeah, mostly.
There's a big difference
He's
between mostly dead and all dead. Please please open his helmet.
What's great about that scene in particular is outside of like the shock factor is the idea of like, oh okay, like it just kind of showcases how different he is now to what he used to be. Because if he was a normal person, he'd be dead. But like he isn't just like super strong or super fast. And it kind of showcases a little bit of body horror elements of like, look at what the stuff he can do now. Look how strong and powerful he is becoming, and it's like that's really amazing and kind of scary at the same time.
Yeah, I think what keeps it from being a sort of like really cheap resurrection is that at the very least, they use it to enhance the fact that, as a result, the belt, even the belt itself, which reacts to his own will, won't keep him out of this battle, which just affects his mind and his body.
Yeah,
And,
it
and
kind of
how
reminds
much
me
of
of
a
yeah,
huge trial this is.
yeah. It kind of reminds me of like Guyver the Bio Boosted Armor. So have any of you two seen that show or read the manga?
I've seen that.
Yeah,
I've
it
seen
reminds you of the
that. Yeah.
scene where like the main character gets like his skull crushed in, and you think he's dead, but like the bio armor basically brings him back to life essentially,
Yeah.
and keeps him fight. Or like the scene where like he gets knocked out and the bio armor takes over and basically kills his dad. Like honestly, Kamen
Yep.
Rider Kuuga in many ways reminds me of Guy with the bio boosted armor. I mean, Fire
Yeah.
is probably more closer to it, but like like the belt is almost like the bio suit. Like it's like, oh no, I didn't hear no bell, but
Yeah, exactly. But like, I mean, I would say Kuga is overall better than Guyver just because it has a much more like. I think it has better like side characters by
yes,
far, definitely.
unlike Kamen Rider Kuuga,
Um,
Guyver hasn't actually finished yet. So
Yeah, exactly that too. It's probably I don't know if it's ever going to finish.
At the rate it was going, it looks like it kind of looks like it's in the ending stretch actually, where it stopped. Like it looked like
Is
it was
it?
going to be. Yeah, where it stopped, where the guy stopped writing it, it looked like it was in the ending stretches. Like probably got another
Okay,
5 to 10 volumes left before it'd be done. Like it definitely looked like that because it was getting to the end stretch. Like it definitely looked
Interesting.
that way. It definitely looked that way. Like just basing on my experience of anime and manga of like, oh, where like kind of like, oh, where would I end the story? Roughly around here, or like this is like the beginning of the end, wrapping it up.
Okay.
But yeah.
Pete, any standout episodes for you?
I mean, like I figured you were gonna do it anyways, but you kind of stole the episode that I was gonna point to,
Just
episodes
Oh.
11 and 12, because it is kind of like it's very stand out to me because it does have like a conflict that goes on that's beyond just there's this guy and we gotta fight him. I think another one that kind of stood out in that regard was the one where you had another side character with his own kind of conflict going on, and I forget a lot about it, but I remember it just stood out to me that it was this guy who wanted this artist guy
Oh,
who wanted to
Chono.
make it to that
Yeah.
contest. Yeah, he wanted to make it to that contest for that to make the cover for a tea a tea leaf kind of advertisement, something or other. And he didn't get a chance to make it, got bummed out, and then he got a talking to because Godai was doing his thing and kind of inspired him, and it was like that also kind of stood out to me, is that, and part of me actually kind of wished that there were more little side stories like that where the stuff that the main character is doing kind of inspires the little side conflicts that these other side characters are having somewhere else, and it's not just again, not to knock Kuga, but like I would prefer like a little bit more variety of like those kinds of episodes because they stood out most especially compared to like a lot of episodes which were fight this monster, and then there's some other kind of stuff happening on the side like with the motorcycle or
Oh yeah, you know what? The another episode that stood out in that regard. Remember the chick who was like into Godai, right?
Oh yes.
I think
And
so. Yeah.
yeah, and she was like really sad because she is in like college and she's trying to become an actress, right? But the problem was that as a result of like one of the attacks from the Grongi, they killed her instructor, and that has kind of like made her much more forlorn, much more aware of like what's happening around her. So you see how the ramifications of this fight not just affect just random NPC characters, but you see side characters that we see all the time get affected because of this.
Yeah,
And
because
she
it's
got
like,
so
it's like
frustrated that in like a later
it's
episode.
kind of like makes it more personal, like I mentioned before, because it's not just like random people on the street that are being hurt. It's random people on the street that know his friends. It's like, oh, like a guy goes in that he knows, it's like, oh, not doing so well. My fucking uncle died, or like, or was killed by one of these monsters.
Yeah,
And even
yeah,
though
exactly.
I don't think
It's so
Godai
good.
has lost anyone, like, well, aside from the teacher and like some of his school friends, but like before that point, like personally, he hasn't been nothing. He hasn't really lost anything. But like just on the periphery, those deaths are on the periphery of his periphery, and that's I think that kind of makes it more impactful.
Yeah, especially since like even after that, like all the characters are affected by it in different ways. Like after that point, the same girl gets it was acting for a play where somebody was pretending to be a monster, I suppose, or pretending to be like one of the Grungy, which is pretty freaking morbid when the the entire conflict is still happening, but whatever. But
What if it was a real
she was so
Grumpy,
upset.
though? Then that'd be a subversion.
Yeah, oh my god! Just Ryan Johnson all over the fucking place. But anyways, freaking but she got so upset about that like the way how callous, I believe, what she described it that they were when they were acting that scene, that yeah, she just slapped her and she ran away and just didn't want to act anymore, face her problems head on. And you have this really sweet scene between her and Godai, just talking about how, doing that isn't the right way to handle problems. And you see him just struggling to kind of, believe himself during that whole time, because look at what he's been doing,
Yeah, like, he's on the front lines. Like, he's seen a lot of people die in front of him. He's put himself in danger. I mean, he's on the front lines, like, fighting.
Yeah, that was just a really, really good scene to me. In fact, I didn't even remember that scene upon the rewatch. It actually really stood out.
Something else we could say about episodes, because, I just want to say to the folks at home, like, we had some editing difficulties because of technical difficulties, so sorry if this doesn't have a lot of steam. This last chunk doesn't have much steam in it, but like, we're just like wrapping it up. So what do you guys think about like the music and some of the directing and stuff like that? Because I thought the show was like very well directed and had some pretty good music.
The directing is incredible. I think in terms of the shows, I think in terms of like the Kamen Rider shows, I think Kuuga has some of the best directing there is.
Yeah,
like,
I think one
from
of the best
some of the scenes that I've seen with
most
of the other freaking Kamen Riders, this one is probably some of the best.
Yeah, and like I think one of my favorite scenes that like showcases this is like I think the second episode with like the spider one who's like mimicking a priest and they're fighting the burning church. It's like the church is burning. There's like fire behind Kamen Rider Kuuga. Like it's just very like stylish, very like oh cool. Like, the lighting is great, the fire in the backgrounds are great. Like, the show is, like, really well directed. And what I like about the show is it's very good at, like, placing music. It knows when to place music and knows not what to, and just lets, like, it knows when to keep things quiet.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of stuff about the music that I particularly liked.
The OP is a banger, by the way. Kuuga,
oh, yeah, 100%.
No pain.
No, fear, pain.
It's like Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah. No way. I imagine fear, pain, and then you have like the scream from the Power Ring lady. My precious Power Ring, gone forever. Just play that at the very end.
Yep.
It's Kuuga.
Yeah, fun fact is that apparently, I think Lone Crit told me this. Apparently, like the actor who played Godai, apparently had no intentions of returning back to Kamen Rider, which is kind of interesting. Which is kind of funny because, like, I think most of the people who played Kamen Rider in the past, most of them do come back for like special stuff. But apparently, the guy from Kuuga wasn't interested.
Yeah, Joe Aguirre didn't really feel like coming back for like subsequent appearances, like movies and stuff. Which makes what, I don't blame him because most of those movies kind of suck. Apparently,
what was the actor's name again? I'm curious what else he's doing.
Joe Odagiri.
Is it with a T or a D?
Odagiri.
Got it. Okay. IMDb, because I only thought about this since you guys mentioned the main actor for a Kamen Rider show that came out in the 2000s. Made me think of a lead Power Ranger actor from a 2000s show that was airing around that same time, Lightspeed Rescue. Who later, like if you remember, he was the actor who went on to like he basically became a lawyer after Lightspeed Rescue ended. Or at least he began pursuing his career in law. Although he still came back for like Forever Red. That was just like the only reason why I thought of it is because he's probably not going to reprise that role, but it was still impressive when he did. Yeah, it looks like looks like Joe is doing pretty good. He's done actually quite a couple of projects just in 2023. None in 2024, according to IMDb. At least not that I can see.
But like, I still like. I think we still have the original like OG Kamen Rider still alive. I think that guy's still around, along with the guy who did Kamen Rider Black. I think those guys are actually still around.
Really? Oh. Yeah, no, he is alive. There was like a big Sentai crossover like a few years back that he was a part of with like OG, like a bunch of Sentai shows and Kamen Riders. I believe, and maybe some other stuff.
It's not even just a few years ago. I'm pretty sure like the original actor for the first Kamen Rider showed up in like a relatively recent crossover thing where they actually brought in his son to act as well,
Oh,
I believe. So yeah, he's still around. The guy who played Kamen Rider Black is still around. I think he was in like a convention at one point, even though he should probably maybe sort of be in jail, but let's not talk about that.
yeah. Was there yeah, like as far as like directing goes, what I liked is, and I mostly say this like in comparison to like some of the other. Bear in mind, like my experience with Kamen Rider, besides this, is the first couple. I think I might have said this earlier. I forget. Is the first couple episodes of W, the first couple episodes. Yeah, well, not even like a couple installments, just maybe the first couple episodes of each, and then Shin Kamen Rider. Which obviously I can't exactly compare a theatrical release to like
TV show.
To the
By
shows.
the way, just before,
But, like,
before
one
you continue,
thing-
I just want to say, Shin Kamen Rider is based. You should watch it. It is a great movie.
It's fun time.
Is probably the best thing Kamen Rider's ever produced.
Definitely. I
Just
feel like
period.
I feel like that's definitely like as far as like the Kamen Rider that for what little it's worth, I think it's the best Kamen Rider anything that I have watched so far.
I mean, I'd argue that like Fires and Kuuga are up there, but like Shin is up there. Kamen Rider Shin, like for me, it's like Kamen Rider Fires and then Kamen Rider Shin Kamen Rider, and the show.
You know, I bet I'm only saying that because I never finished Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. Now, obviously, if I finish can't say it with a straight face. God damn it!
Kamen Rider Dragon Knight.
Jesus Christ!
Okay, let's hope that Lone doesn't watch this video.
Fight the fuck.
Okay, let's hope that Kamen Rider.
Yeah,
Let's
so
hope
like
that Lone doesn't watch this because he'll have a fucking heart attack if he hears it. He's like.
But as far as like directing, like I think because I was originally trying to since 40, 50 long episode shows are difficult for me to get through just because like I got other stuff to do, and unfortunately I never ended up finishing Kuuga, but I intend to.
Sonic games to play.
I was I was tied between my first Kamen Rider that I wanted to watch. I was tied between Game, W, and Kuuga, and I watched the first couple episodes of each of them. And while there were like other factors, there were directing aspects. The much older kind of like aspects of directing for the first one kind of stood out to me, especially in like regards to how they used props and costumes. And granted, this is probably like more of an example of the times, but I much prefer these kinds of shows that rely more on things like practical effects than special effects. And now like Kuuga still like definitely has that, and there are some times when you can tell it's a special effect, but I like it a lot more when you have like when someone's taking a gunshot, or like someone's shooting a gun at one of the Grongi, and like it's an actual pyrotechnic effect on their costume rather than like some kind of special effect like a green screen explosion or something like that. And I like that about Kuuga. Again, that's probably just because older shows were much more reliant on that. But that was something that stood out to me a lot more, and it's just something that I find a lot more impressive in terms of like the general kind of creation process of that kind of thing.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of
like... It's really hype.
Yeah, like it kind of reminds me a little bit of like how like Aliens 2 with its practical effects. Like I think Kamen Rider Kuuga did a lot with what it had, and it didn't use much CGI. Like I think they did great with what they had.
Oh yeah, what they have, like it's honestly to me it looks better than like what a lot of them look nowadays. I understand that they're purposefully going with a much different vibe in comparison to the other ones, which is fine.
Understandable.
But yeah, understandable. If a little bit regrettable. But I think overall it does the series a whole lot of favors just going forward from that, just because it feels like it feels of its time, but in the best way possible. Especially in terms of the use of lighting, like not just in terms of how dark everything a lot of instances look, but how bright things are, how comforting it can be.
Just a lot of stuff about how they shoot things. Like
Yeah,
in
I also
in a
like
way,
how the
like
guns look really real as well. Like the guns also like I think these are actually real guns or model ones they actually have as well.
They look pretty damn real.
yeah. I mean, like in fairness, you could. It wouldn't surprise me if they were real, because I mean, in fairness, like the most you really need are just blanks. And I mean, there
Yeah.
are movies that like use real guns with blanks. It is understandable for those who don't want to use real ones because of some like very obvious concerns of, oh well, what happens if like someone's an idiot and accidentally puts a real one instead of a
Like
space.
what happened to
Mm.
like Bruce Lee's son, like Brandon Lee, or the
Yeah.
incident with Alex Baldwin, like.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin. I thought it was Kevin. Why did I say Kevin Spacey?
No, he did other stuff. Kevin Spacey did other stuff. Not, I don't think it was gun stuff
Okay.
that Kevin Spacey did. But like, yeah, I mean, there's
right.
always the
It was Alec
concern
Baldwin.
that you could end up like Brandon Lee or like the Alex Baldwin situation. So if you don't know who Brandon Lee is, he was the son of Bruce Lee, and much like his father, very much like a chip off the old block, and basically, if he had lived, he would have been like another Bruce Lee in terms of fame and stardom. But I'm afraid it was not to be.
Yeah.
But by the way,
shame.
I watched his last movie, The Crow. Excellent movie, by the way. You should watch it. The Crow is great.
Show or movie?
The movie, The Crow.
Yeah, you
It's,
said
it's-
movie.
Sorry.
yeah, it's the last movie he ever actually did. I wasn't exactly I hadn't actually heard of Brandon Lee until like up to that point. But it's like, oh, okay, this is Bruce Lee's son. It's like, oh, this guy's kind of cool. Oh, The Crow. Let's watch this. Yeah, he basically like that was his last movie because he like literally died on set because of a gun accident.
Damn. I did not know that. No, I've not seen The Crow. I've heard of it, but I've not seen it before.
Yeah, I think Brandon Lee does a good job. Like you could,
Okay.
like he's very much a chip off the old block.
Let's see. Is there anything else about Kuuga talk about?
No, I think we'll move on to final thoughts.
I
Like
think
unless
go
you
for-
want to, I think we'll just move on
Yeah,
to final
final
thoughts. 'Cause I
thoughts
think
is
like
fine.
we've done majority. Like we've done majority. Like I'll be editing this out, but we've done like mostly what we're going to talk about like in the earlier part. So I'll start with my ending thoughts and my rating. I'm going to give Kamen Rider Kuuga like a 7, maybe out of 10. This is probably one of the best Kamen Rider shows. If you want like a more grounded, more realistic take of like, how would like this is like one of the more grounded and more realistic takes of like, how would people react if you had a bunch of monsters running around killing people, and there's this guy with a motorbike who's like kicking ass and taking names. Like it's probably like the most real, one of the more realistic and grounded takes on that for a Kamen Rider show. Like it isn't like overly flashy. It's not going for like the super mega transformations or like giant robots or anything like too ridiculous.
Mhm.
Like it's pretty like grounded, has some cool interesting characters, has a little bit of like maybe occult mysticism going on. The Grongi are fun. It just has a lot going for it, and I think people should give these older Kamen Rider shows a chance because they're actually like fairly decent and have a lot of substance and meat to them. Like there's a lot to chew on here.
Right. As for my thoughts, my score is very similar. I'm giving Kuuga a very good 7.5 out of 10. I think it's, in terms of shows, it is probably the best Kamen Rider show there is. There's, from what I've heard about and from what other people have told me and from what little I've seen of other things, barely anything really competes. So I see no issue recommending it to people. If you just want good superhero content, old school shit with some of the best directing, best fight scene choreography that you've seen in this genre, go watch this show. It is incredible, and pretty much, even though some episodes kind of bleed into each other a bit, even when they don't have a whole lot going on, there's always something to really, really like and sink your teeth into. And, the main character is very engaging, and the acting overall is incredible. Like, I can't understate this enough. In terms of shows, this is probably the best a Kamen Rider has ever been and will ever be. And I can't recommend it enough.
Can I even give my thoughts on a show I haven't finished yet?
Well, I guess you feel like you would. I guess I'll ask you a question. Would you want to finish Kuuga?
I would. Well, yeah, I figure I might as well. It's just a matter of.
I mean,
So,
not just
alright.
out of obligation, but like how you feel about it.
Okay. Listen, after the last one, I'm trying not to be Mr. Negative here because I did have a good
It's
time with what I
fine.
watched.
Listen, it's fine. Listen,
There is-
I don't care if you have an opinion that. Listen, Listen, I don't listen. If you have an opinion that I might disagree with, or people might disagree with, that's fine. Put it on here. It makes the podcast. It makes this cast interesting.
Yeah.
So say what you're gonna say.
Yeah, then I can.
Yeah, we'll
make a
crucify you
call-out
later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what
Exactly.
makes these fun. Anyway, so no, I did like it. Here's my thing, and like I'm not even sure if I don't really have like any particular problems with it. Besides maybe like what you mentioned, Kaiser, was that like there
Mhm.
were at least a number of episodes that I feel just kind of bleed in with one another, where it was just beat
Yeah.
the Grongi, unlock a new power, that kind of thing. Maybe some very, very minor, like other stuff that's happening, or maybe, some other stuff about the mystery behind Kuuga, or the Grongi is kind of being revealed, but it's not really like a big part of
Super
the episode.
engaging, right? Or super engaging part of the
And
episode.
I think maybe part of the reason why I wasn't really getting through the episodes very quickly, despite how much time I had, was because I feel like some of it I was kind of getting bored with a certain repetition of it. Now, I don't want to say that like the episodes that I watched were necessarily bad in that regard. But here's the thing. I have not seen Power Rangers Lost Galaxy since I was a child, and I can recall several plots from certain episodes very, not intimately, but distinctly. I remember stuff about the main villain and like how one of his guys wanted to betray him. I remember how there were like these 3 secret Zords that like the bad guys were getting their hands on. That was kind of a big deal because it kept kicking their asses. I remember that like the big bad's daughter got sent away to a desert world where she had like met some biker dude and had to, I guess, have some kind of coming of age subplot, then comes back and realizes the Power Rangers killed her dad, and so she becomes the new big bad, kind of. I remembered Magna Defender, his whole deal, how
Oh,
he
yeah.
died and stuff with his son. I remember the main character's brother eventually becoming Magna Defender. I remember the fucking Alien
That was
episode.
sick.
It was basically just just a bunch of like randos on a spaceship with a monster waiting for the Red Ranger to come and save them. And like as a kid, that was one of the most terrifying experiences in a Power Rangers show.
Right.
Because there was really like a whole lot of stuff. And again, I've not seen that show in years. I could go on about like some of the other, episodes that I remember there, but a lot of it stood out to me. There's a lot that I don't remember because it's been years, but a lot of it stood out to me for whatever reason, even though I've seen this show more recently and it is technically much, much more fresh in my mind, or it should be compared to Lost Galaxy. I don't remember a lot of the plots or a lot of the episodes besides just a couple of them that like stood out to me in particular. And it wasn't even like, it was the side plots kind of interested me the most about those ones that I remember. There was something about it that just wasn't really sticking with me. Now, again, what I did watch, I didn't hate. In fact, like I didn't dislike. I can't say that there was anything about it necessarily that I disliked besides how some of the episodes just kind of.
Sorry to cut you off, but I think
What
it's
is
that like maybe like you're not vibing with the show as much as you think you would. Like I definitely have that with some anime or manga where I'm like, where I read or watch, I'm just like,
Sure.
this show is good, but I'm not vibing with it. And sometimes I just drop it because it just doesn't click. And I think that's partially what's happening with you and Kamen Rider. I don't think it's a you problem. I think it's more like the show's problem. Like it just doesn't have, it makes your neurons connect or click. Sorry about that.
No, I'm thinking that's kind of it, and I've been trying to get through it. I kind of didn't want to say that might be it because I don't want to say that about like a show with what I believe what Lone Crit described as having the best Kamen Rider episode ever, and so I assumed that like Kamen Rider Kuuga was one of these really, really great Kamen Rider shows.
Yeah, but at
and
the
like
end of
maybe
the day,
it probably
you can't
is. I
help
don't.
how you feel about something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it is what
Also,
it
here's
is.
the other
If
thing
it's
is
not
that,
like
your opinion could change. Like, there's some shows I dislike. I mean, I'll use an example. So I recently rewatched Guilty Crown with a friend of mine. We're group watching it.
right.
And as I was like going for the show, I actually found I had less problems with it than I did like beforehand. Now, I still think. Now here's the thing. I still dislike the show a bit. Like I still think it has quite a few problems. However, I hate it less, and I dislike it not for the reasons that I used to. Or or another example, like Code Geass Season 2. I dislike that season for the most part, but when I was rewatching it, I noticed there was a lot of things I liked about it. Even though I still dislike it, I hate it less, or I have a bit more of an appreciation for it, because
Fake hater. Fake hater.
But my point
I
is
get
that,
what
like,
you mean.
now, granted, I watched these shows when I was like a teenager, and now I'm like in my my 20s or something like that, and so my opinion possibly changed because of like experience or stuff I've learned, or whatever the fuck, right? Maybe it's just like I'm getting older and my mind's maturing. Who knows, right? But that's not necessarily like a you problem. That's just like a part of life, basically.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
I'm not gonna
fine.
fault you for that. So continue.
Only one way to find out. Because I've been tempted to kind of revisit some older Power Rangers that I grew up with as a kid, kind of see how much that holds my attention, and like if it compares or if it does better than it did with Kuuga, or if maybe it does about as well with Kuuga, and maybe I've like grown out of it, or just doesn't vibe with me. That's definitely something I've considered, but I would like to finish Kuuga just to see it to like the end, see what else that there is, kind of what I'm necessarily missing out on, because I did technically stop just before the beatdown episode, which I still kind of want to see.
That was a fucking tragedy.
So
yeah.
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 No, I will. Well, I've seen the beatdown at least. I at least saw the actual scene that it happened in, but now I got to watch the context behind it.
Yeah, but like at the end of the day, don't force it, right? Because you're watching it to win. At the end of the day, we watch these things to enjoy it, not to just like fill up because we're like obligated to do so because we're planning on doing a thing, blah blah blah. And like you were trying to do you're trying to do like some other projects.
To be fair, not to toot our own horns. I mean, we're all busy with shit. Like I'm learning how. I'm getting around learning how to drive and writing a novel type thing.
Oh, cool.
That's what I'm saying. Like I'm saying that, like sometimes when there's things like that going on, can fuck with your motivation to keep up with a certain show. That's happened to me many times. Even if I think overall the show is like.
Yeah, I mean, like to be honest,
like I said, just don't force
when I was
it.
busy with uni stuff, which I've finished now, like I usually would take a break from anime and manga. Like I'll take a break. Because we do this for fun. We do this for a hobby. I'm not obligated to watch anime. Like
oh yeah,
it's very consumerist. Sure. It's very consumerist. Like I've got to do this. No, I don't have to watch it. I watch it when I feel like it, and we do it for fun.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's a good way to look at it. Except for Arcane, I am obligated to watch that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Kaiser drives
to your house.
Kaiser drives where you live and changes the basement to watch Arcane.
Oh Jesus Christ! Fuck yes! Oh God! I just need CBF.
Wait, I have never heard anyone be that excited that somebody's gonna break into their house before. That's a new one.
Well, you're about to find out, Kaiser.
Oh my!
Wait a minute.
You're like, wait a minute. It's not going. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Oh God. All right. Yeah, man.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But like, basically, like, people like, listen. If a thing doesn't vibe with you, it just doesn't vibe with you. I mean, but that's just part of like being an adult or being.
Yeah, that's fine. But overall, though, I think we can all at least say that the show is like definitely competent. And if you ever want to like revisit it, you'll definitely take that chance. If my recommendation means anything to you, I don't know.
Yeah, like if if one cares. I mean, I think this is a solid Kamen Rider show, solid Takusatsu show, and you should watch it. I think it's good. It's good. It's a lot. It's a good meat to chew on, especially if you're sick of like MCU shit and stuff like that. Like
God, I would
return to Japan.
I would pay. Listen, I would pay such good money to see some tokusatsu studio do a toku take on like Marvel's Avengers, or even just one of the Avengers, like a tokusatsu Iron Man. Fucking watching like a Japanese Tony
Japanese
Stark
Spider-Man.
Henshin.
Japanese Spider-Man is
he pulls out the fucking.
Firearms.
He pulls out like the Mark II suitcase Iron Man suit, fucking with the Henshin, and goes through like a whole morphing process getting suited up.
He doesn't even have to do it. He's just doing it for stylistic reasons. Like he's just doing it for stylistic reasons.
Dude, I would love to see like a Japanese take on the Avengers. I want to see what like a tokusatsu studio would do with those characters and like what they understand with it. Which is like, it's interesting how like I say that because like I am very very against American studios doing, like Western takes on Japanese media, whereas I am like the exact opposite with the reverse.
Well, the thing is that like, there is the big massive cultural difference, and also like Americans and Japanese people.
Oh,
at least
Japanese are way more respectful to like their properties and stuff, and like even just respectful in general. I don't even live there, and I fucking know that.
Yeah, like I mean, with the take a look at the freaking anime adaptations over here in the West, right? Very few. There are three that are actually any fucking good. And even then, I feel like my memory is dimming as to whether or not it's actually 3 of them or not. That's how bad it actually is. Whereas with Japan, I am willing to just let them see what they can do. Okay?
Yeah, like one of there is a reason why Cyberpunk Edge Runners was one of the first genuinely good video game adaptations. It's because Studio Trigger was meticulous with how accurate they were portraying that game. There are literally shots of, like, if you look at the background of some shots in that anime, you can actually go to those places in the game, and it looks almost identical. It's crazy how, like...
No, the thing is that, like, that anime, I think is, like, a couple of years, I think the Cyberpunk video game, it takes place, like, a couple of years after the events of the anime, so...
I believe so.
Yeah. Like, I actually think you even meet some characters who are in the show itself as well, so it's kind of like...
and, like, yeah, I would like to see what kind of like takes they would do on that. I would like to I'd like to see even if it was just a return to the old tokusatsu Spider-Man Spider String. I'd like to see what kind of takes they would have on these different kinds of characters. I know that there's actually a manga for Batman. I don't know how it is, but it looks kind of interesting. I believe there might be some manga for some other either DC or Marvel characters.
There's been a couple manga for Spider-Man. The one that I read is freaking weird.
Oh, is
it is weird.
How weird are we talking? We talking like OG Toku, like Spider-Man weird where he pulls out like a gun weird, or like even weirder than that?
I think arguably weirder after a while. I think arguably, debatably, maybe not as bombastic, but it's very... It goes in some weird directions. Let me just say that.
Is it like Japanese weird?
The other one...
Is it like Japanese kind of weird?
It's Japanese weird.
Okay,
you know what it's called?
It's just called Spider-Man, and it's by Hirai Kazumasa. I'll link it.
Link it.
So y'all can check it out.
But
yeah, but overall though, I think we can just wrap it up from there.
I think So thank you for joining us, people, and I hope we'll see you guys next time.